So, just to kind of backtrack before we really dive into everything, you know, the last few weeks, well, yeah, so the last, oh, sure. Hold on, maybe. Yeah, there we go. Helps when you turn the switch all the way on. So, the last few weeks, you know, when we start talking about the habits of health, our whole goal is to help everybody understand that, you know, when we have the right blueprint, all you got to do is follow the blueprint and everything works. You know, think about building a home. You know, we talked about this today on the radio when we were recording a radio program. When you think about building a home, you have all the materials laying over here, and you have the blueprint for how to do it. And what you do is you just start one little step at a time, and you start following the blueprint. It may not look much like a house as you're laying the foundation and you're pouring the concrete, and you start framing up. Finally, after you start framing walls, you start to see, hey, wait, this is starting to take some form. It's starting to look a little bit like a house. And all it is you just keep following the sequential process of that blueprint, and before you know it, you have the end result that you're looking for. When we talk about learning these habits of health, that's exactly what we're talking about, is when you learn the blueprint for how to not only get healthy but to stay there, all of a sudden it's not a matter of believing whether or not you can do it or believing you have the willpower to do it. It's just keep following the steps, and before you know it, those walls start to go up and you start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. You start seeing that, hey, I can do this, and I am seeing results from what I'm trying to do. So just trust the system and know that when you learn the right habits, that things come together in the end. So, you know, to start out, the first week we talked a little about recognizing our habits, good habits, bad habits, and if we have bad habits, to basically learn how to change them to the good habits. As far as setting, you know, week 2 is setting goals. Again, structuring ourselves, learning how to start writing things down, start doing the things that are going to move us where we need to go. So, primary, and then the third week was primary, secondary, and fundamental choices. Again, just the right structure to be able to, you know, just how to reorient ourselves to start moving the right direction. That's kind of what we've talked about. And today, what we're going to do is we're really kind of getting into how do we manage, you know, how do we learn and how do we manage the food that we're taking in? How do we how do we eat? You know, that little video clip we just watched talked about, you know, we can actually train our body to be really stingy and hold on to all the, you know, as much of the calories as it can, and be really stingy about letting the calories from our fat stores go. But there's ways of eating, you know, to change how we're eating that will actually just turn on those motors that'll help just start releasing the fat to where we can actually burn it efficiently. Ideally, if we are eating correctly, our fat cells are just a revolving door. You know, we have fat going in and fat coming out all the time because we're eating appropriately. If we are eating inappropriately, obviously we're going to have, you know, it could go more one way or more the, you know, you could be storing a lot more or burning a lot more. And the idea is ultimately, you know, while we are in a fat on the program trying to get to our healthy weight, we're trying to burn more of the fat than we're storing. And then ultimately at the end, we want to learn how to turn that revolving door on to where that, you know, the fat goes in, the energy goes in, the energy comes out as we need it. So that's really, tonight what we're talking about is really starting to understand how to do that in a very effective way. So again, controlling that energy intake, understanding what to eat, how to eat, and how to most effectively make our bodies function and make our bodies feel good. So, and then managing our insulin pump. Our insulin greatly determines what our body's doing. And so learning how to do that is really critical. So again, right here we're talking about energy, and obviously not that I'm necessarily an evolutionist kind of person, but there was a time when we put out a lot more energy to get the food and the calories we brought in. We put a lot of energy out to get that. Matter of fact, when we were hunters and gatherers, we might do a lot of hunting and not gather anything. There were times when we went hunting and didn't come home with any kill of any kind, so we might have gone hungry. Now when we go to our refrigerator, we pretty much have a 100% chance that we're coming home with food. It may not be what we want, but we're coming home with something. We got food. So, and then obviously, understanding how this is not what we want. We want to make sure we're correcting this. So, as you look at burning fat, now these are some things that I want you to actually think about as far as your daily, how do you feel each day? How do you know whether you're in a fat storage mode or whether you're in a fat burning mode? So right here, do you eat a lot of refined processed foods or drinks? That right there, if you are eating a fair amount of those things, it's probably a pretty good indicator that you're in more of a fat storage mode. If you're going for the really, a lot of the carbohydrates and the different breads and pastas, those are very refined. Do you have a hard time concentrating or staying focused? Believe it or not, when you are in a fat storage mode, that is something that you will frequently, you're focused. You look at kids, a lot of kids with attention deficit disorder or so-called attention deficit disorder, when they're on a tremendous amount of sugar, even though their bodies are able to tolerate it much better than when we're older, what's happening is their bodies, the way those sugars work in their body, they can't stay focused, they can't concentrate, and it's because of how much energy that they have in their system. It's like they're short-circuiting. So that's a very good indicator. When you can't focus, it's probably because you're not eating right. You may not be eating frequently. You may not be eating the right stuff, the right fuel for your brain. Do you skip meals and end up eating only once or twice a day? When you're in tax season, I would imagine, and when, all those poor accountants and tax preparers, when they were hammering through the long nights, there's probably plenty of times where they went hours and hours and just forgot about eating, period. And that's one of those, and it's easy to do. It's easy to get caught up and just not think about it, but it's something that we must do to be able to make sure our body is in that continual, where that, our energy is on that revolving door, going through that revolving door, coming in and coming out. So, do you struggle with cravings and low blood sugar? Does everyone know what low blood sugar feels like? You hit the floor, you got brain fog, you just can't, it's like if you stayed up all night and you hit that 4 o'clock in the morning, it's just like, you just can't focus on anything. Are you irritable if meals are missed or delayed? Okay, that's one of those things, and it's because of how we've started training our body. Now it wants those refined carbs so fast because it's wanting to shoot our blood sugar back up. It's what we've trained our body to do, and we do get when we don't get what those. If you think about a drug addict, when they don't have their fix, they do crazy things. They do things that they would never do if they were sober and they weren't addicted. They do things because their body, it craves it. So just understand that food is no different. Do you struggle with mid-morning and afternoon slumps? That's, I'll tell you right now, one of the indicators that you may be kind of borderline diabetic is when you eat a meal. If 30 minutes after a meal, you're just like, ooh, like you want to take a nap and you could just lay on the floor and fall asleep, that's a pretty good indicator that your body is in it's like very close to kind of tipping over to a type 2 diabetic type situation. Those are physiologic indicators that we're not doing very well. And then, do you have difficulty staying asleep? Because when we don't eat correctly, because of how our sugars affect different chemical releases and hormone releases in our body, we may not sleep well at all. And so those are just little signs. Think about yourself. Do you fit into any of those? There's something else that I learned years ago, and I didn't put it in here, but a lot of people, and actually this kind of explains it right here, but in fact, where to go? So basically, you know how you start getting, you get like skin tags on your neck. You see people with skin tags on their neck, maybe in their armpits, maybe even on their face or things like that. Little skin tags are actually a result of when we overstimulate our insulin. It actually produces, and it's coming up here. I'll come across it here through the notes. But basically, that's one of those things that is an indicator that you're spiking your insulin too much. You're spiking your insulin too frequently, and it actually, it's an anabolic state that it puts your body in to where it actually starts growing these little skin tags. So those are just, again, little indicators that, you know what, your diet's probably not as good as it should be or has room for improvement. So as we go through this, insulin, again, you saw in the little video, those who were here earlier, insulin's job is to take carbohydrates and stuff them into the cells for us to use right now. What happens if we have too much insulin because we're eating a lot of carbohydrates is now all of a sudden we quickly store the sugars in the cells that are burning it readily, and we have a bunch of leftover, and all the rest gets jammed right into our fat cells. Insulin's job is to take and convert that excess sugar or carbohydrates in our system and jam it into our fat cells. So understanding that, it organizes the use of our fuels and either stores it or oxidizes it. Oxidizing it is basically burning it for fuel. So now what it also does, it decreases our blood glucose. So its job is to bring the sugars in our bloodstream down. Okay, it facilitates cellular metabolism. So it keeps the cellular motors running. It's responsible for energy storage or fat and or glycogen or both. It slows the breakdown of fat in adipose tissue by inhibiting glucagon. So right here, this is what we on that little video clip. It talked about our bodies can get it can get stingy with releasing fat. Like it makes it really hard for us to actually get that scale to start dropping, and that's primarily because of that right there, that the glucagon. It slows down that breakdown. So when we have a lot of when we frequently are spiking our insulin, it means it's going to prevent us, or in a large degree, prevent us from actually burning fat for energy.
Is that what they call metabolic syndrome then?
Very similar. Metabolic syndrome is actually, that would typically be the person that's kind of riding the fence of almost a diabetic. That means they're getting heavier, they're starting to, their blood pressure is rising, their blood sugars are probably getting a little bit borderline. That's kind of typically what we see as metabolic syndrome. So you're kind of progressing rapidly down the wrong path. So also it causes cells to systematically to preferentially oxidize sugars instead of fat, instead of our fat stores. Okay, so again, when we have high insulin, it's going to go to sugars always first for energy, and neglect burning the fat off of our body. It also, this is the one I was talking. So it simulates the uptake of amino acids, leading to an anabolic state in the body. Anabolic state is when you are building. Okay, when I was talking about the skin tags, it's our bodies wanting to grow bigger. When bodybuilders are lifting, after every workout, they will eat carbohydrates with their protein because the carbohydrates facilitate this anabolic. It helps to bring that energy into the cells so they can grow bigger, grow stronger. It also increases the permeability of cells to potassium, magnesium, and phosphate ions, and then it inhibits protein degradation. So, it basically doesn't let you break down protein very well when you have, again, just the kind of the hierarchy of energy in our body is the first place our body goes to for energy is sugar. The second place that it would preferentially go to would be protein. So either the protein that we're taking in our diet and or our protein in our body, our muscles. Okay, and ideally, we don't want to burn any of our muscles. We want to maintain as much of that as we can. So that's why it's so important to eat a very balanced diet. And then the last place it goes is our fat stores. Our fat stores are our backup. I mean, it wants to save those at all costs. So again, learning how to eat correctly will make it to where our body's very efficient. Very efficient, and not only you get the fat to burn just as you're taking. You just keep that door rolling through like that. So
you said sugars first.
Sugar is first.
Is that why sugar is controlled only through the MetaFast meals?
Well, that's the reason we limit on the program carbohydrates is because the second you introduce too many carbohydrates, instead of going to the fat for energy, it'll switch back to sugar like that. Exactly. And again, what insulin's responsibility is to do is we have in all of our cells the ability to store glycogen, which is that ready, fast energy. Okay, and again, the preferred energy that our body uses. And so it quickly will take sugars and store it into there. And then what happens is because there's so much glycogen stored in those muscles from the sugars, it says, hey, I don't have to go to the fat. I got plenty over here I can just peel off. And so the reason the program works so well is because after about 3 to 4 days, you've burned the majority of that sugar and glycogen out of your body. So now your body says, crud, I need more fuel. I need more energy. I'm eating regularly, which is great. So, we feel good because every time we eat, it raises our metabolism. But now it says, I still need more energy. So what it does is it starts peeling into those fat stores, and basically it starts converting the fat into the glycogens and basically using that for the energy source. This here is kind of explaining when we were talking when you're spiking your insulin a lot, this is what's happening. You get these huge spikes and this is found in Dr. Anderson's book, by the way, and but this is so an orange juice, boom, you're going to get a huge spike, you're going to fall. The bagel, the hamburger, a candy bar in the middle of the day and a big dinner. This is kind of that great American diet. This is one of those things that we, when we grow up, we learn, you're going to eat three solids or 3 squares a day, right? And when that happens, you get these big ups and downs, especially when we have high carbohydrate foods readily available wherever we turn. So, this is what we're trying to understand how to not do, because these kinds of spikes are what cause us to crave. These are what cause us to want to eat the carbohydrates. It's because of what happens, the chemicals released in our brain from these spikes and valleys. And so when we anyone who's been on the program knows the first few days, if it's going to be tough, it's that first few days. Once you get past you burn all those sugars out and you get into the rhythm where your blood sugar is actually more like this, where you keep those spikes really low, all of a sudden, not that sugary things or the things you used to like don't sound good, but it's like, I could take it or leave it. I don't care. And that's because of what we've done here. We've turned off those mechanisms. And one of the things that I really love, again, about how the program works is when you're doing, if you're having these types of things, and you want to lose weight, you have to use a tremendous amount of willpower to fight what our brain tells us when we're used to this kind of a diet. When you get into this phase right here, where you just keep things nice and even all the time, all of a sudden, willpower doesn't even play a part in getting healthy. What it is, again, this here is when you've dialed in that blueprint, this is what it is. This here is the blueprint to take you to the healthy weight that you want to be, to help get you closer to your goals. And so again, and these are basically all understanding that we have to eat frequently, that we have to, that we have to make good choices in the things that we do eat. I heard something just the other day, and I actually really liked it. And it's more so for when we hit the our transition. But when it comes to eating correctly, we want to maintain the frequency. But as we look at our choices, if you were to make 2 lists, okay, so if you took a list and said, these are all the foods that I love, right over here. These over here are all the foods that I know are healthy and the foods that I should be eating more of. All right? And then what you do is you say, you know what? 80% of the time I'm eating the healthy choices. The other 20% of the time I can pick something out of the things that I really love.
Are you talking like on a daily basis?
I'm talking on a regular basis. If 80% of the time, once you get to your healthy weight and once you start living healthier habits, if 80% of the time you are making good choices, and honestly, I would recommend writing them down, because it's just like your goals. If you don't write them down, it's just a wish list. It's like, oh yeah, I know what I should and shouldn't eat. But when you write it down and you can be like, you know what, these are the things that I should be eating. And these are the things that occasionally I can have. Then you still get to enjoy the things that you like in life, and you are going to be living a very healthy, balanced diet. And honestly, you know, a lot of people, especially once they start getting healthier, they find that some of the things that they used to really like, they really don't even like them as much as they thought they did. They actually feel so much better when they're eating healthy that those things don't really have that same appeal. Going back, looking at this right here, these kind of spikes are actually the kind of spike, you know, anyone ever, what do they call it? Oh, crud. Basically, when you eat cruddy fast food, that's what your blood sugar's doing. This up and down actually causes you to crave that crappy food. Even though, you know, after you've eaten really good food for a while, you eat the junk food that you used to think you really liked, and you're like, oh, this is awful.
But just doing that.
But when you do it enough, your body starts to say, oh, this is pretty good stuff. You know, this is what I need to eat. This makes me, you know, even though it might only make them feel better for a few minutes, you know, that's what it does. So it's literally, this is what we want to try and learn to avoid. So putting things together. When insulin levels are high, most of the energy we are using is coming from our carbohydrates. It's coming from the sugars that we're bringing into our body. When it's low, like when we first wake up in the morning, what's happening is the energy is coming from our fat stores. And when we're eating correctly, we can kind of just keep that going. We can just, when we're following the program, the 5-in-1, we're going to just maintain, we're going to keep that insulin really low. We're going to feel really good. You know, we're going to be, you know, I think pretty much everyone would agree when you're in that fat burn, you start sleeping better. You have better energy. You have more clarity of thought. You feel really good, and it's because our body is actually functioning on a very high level. It's functioning how it should function. We're fueling our body instead of just always wanting to enjoy food. So this here is just, this probably doesn't show up at all. I apologize for anyone on the camera, but I'll kind of go through this here. So over on the left, we're talking about carbohydrates and understanding what those do. So when we eat carbohydrates, basically it elevates our blood sugar. Our insulin will then be kicked out into our system to help bring those sugars back down. And two things happen. Up here, the glucose, the sugar gets taken up into our muscles and into the cells of our body. And then the excess, and it's utilized as energy, but the excess right here is stored as fat or triglycerides. And then down here, we have one little turnoff. Excess glucose is converted to glycogen in the liver. So some of that will be stored in our liver. Some of that will be stored in our muscles. But the excess ultimately gets stored in our fat cells. This here is the diagram of pretty much what our blood sugar looks like when we are on the 5-in-1. When we're following the blood sugar, and this is fantastic. Oops. If you look at this one's really good as far as the way the spikes are. You have even the bigger meals, there's still fairly low spikes in blood sugar. But this here, it's very regulated. And that's why we feel so good, because our body just stays at such an even level of energy that we feel great. Our body is, we have such a steady energy that our body's like, yeah, we can use this fat storage because we're good. We have everything coming in that we need. And then, and really, what happens is the reason the program works so well is because it starts teaching us to eat correctly. It makes it very simple for us to eat correctly. You know, the 6 fuelings a day, we call the science of 6 fuelings a day. It helps us lose weight faster. It helps us control cravings. It helps us to burn energy more efficiently. It helps us to sleep better. It helps us to train our body to let those fat cells have the revolving door, as opposed to a nice, you know, sticky, rusty hinge that doesn't want to open. It'll let it go in one way, but doesn't want to let it out the other direction. The science of 6 fuelings literally is what helps our body to function how it was made to function. It decreases our risks of cardiovascular disease. It decreases cholesterol. It decreases inflammation in our body. Everything about eating 6 times a day is fantastic. One of the things that is really interesting, and Kristen, maybe you could shed some light on this, since you recently have been training for a competition, right, where you're leaning out tremendously, right? From every bodybuilder I've ever talked to, when they go to lean out, they increase the frequency with which they eat. True?
Yeah, and you have to really watch your carbohydrates and what kind of carbs you take in.
Exactly.
And I'm talking about the little vegetables and even specific vegetables. For women, it's a lot different than for men.
Sure.
Because it's harder for women to lean
Well,
out.
women naturally have a higher, they're supposed to have a higher percent body fat. I mean, that's natural for women to have a, you know, whereas optimal health for a guy, the percent body fat's going to be somewhere around 10%. For women, it's going to be, you know, that same optimal, it would be more like 18%. So it'd be, and that would be a great percent body fat for a woman. But when it comes to leaning out, that and it does matter what you're eating. Matter of fact, one of the things, just so you guys understand, when you do eat a lot of sugars and you're storing glycogen in your body, part of storing glycogen is you store fluids with it. There's water that is stored in those cells as a part of storing glycogen. That's why when you're on the first week of the program, you seem like you dumped a lot of weight really quick. It's because you burn that glycogen out, so you do dump a lot of water. You've heard people say, oh, it's all water weight. It's because you dump, I mean, it's water you don't necessarily need, but you're dumping it as part of that metabolic process. So understand that frequency is so powerful in training our body to not be stingy with burning fat. It teaches our body to just function how it was meant to function. Plus, one of the things I didn't even mention is when you eat regularly, you don't get the huge cravings, but you don't want to have those, you know, when you're starving, you will always make the bad choice. When, you know, if you're not prepared and you're really, really hungry, it's really, really easy in our culture to stop at a fast food place. It's really easy to grab exactly what we shouldn't eat because, hey, that's what our mind says is going to make us feel good the fastest. You know what I mean? Those carbohydrates are going to get our blood sugar up the fastest, and our mind says that's what we need. We're low. So, you know, just remember how important it is to eat regularly. And on the program, when you miss meals, you want to cheat. All of a sudden, when you miss meals, your mind starts craving things that you weren't craving before. And it's all because of, again, our mind knows that, hey, we want our blood sugar up and it's low right now. What's it going to do it the fastest? So just kind of keep that in mind. These here, to help you be more successful with the things you're eating, create the microenvironment of health in your home. This, to me, is just like, you know, remember in math class or in your history test when your teacher says, okay, you can write notes on a card this size, as whatever you can fit on a 5x7 card or whatever, that can be your cheat sheet for the test. And we used to write as teeny tiny as we could to jam as much information on there to try to make sure we did well on a test. That's this. This is the cheat sheet right here. When you set yourself up for success, the thing, you know, if you have, if let's say you really love Oreo cookies and vanilla ice cream, if you have those in your fridge and you're having a rough day, how easy is it for you to be like, all right, this sucks today. I'm going for it. I had a really sucky day. I deserve it. Okay? I mean, does that sound familiar? That's exactly what's going to happen. So set yourself up for success by getting the crap out that you don't want, putting the things in that you need and that you should have, and all of a sudden this gets much, much easier. When it's not there, it's really easy not to eat it. You know, I mean, if you're trying to quit smoking, don't buy the smokes. If you don't have any smokes, it's really easy not to smoke them. So you know what I mean? It's like prepare the environment so you can succeed. You know, give yourself every opportunity to succeed. Choosing healthier and leaner food. Again, we do want to make good choices. We want to understand, and we're going to get more into this as the weeks go on, but understanding the foods that do spike our blood sugar and the ones that help keep it even and the healthier things that we should be eating, you know, it's all in Dr. Anderson's book. You know, if you look here, you'll find all of these different charts and diagrams in the book. Quick references, okay? The leanest are some of the game meats, you know, elk and deer and buffalo and things like that. You know, then it talks about, you know, some of the poultry, some of the fish, and then even some of the beefs that are very lean. So just understand what is the best for you, what things you should be avoiding, and then again, just use good judgment with how you eat and start learning to do it correctly. Good fats, you know, look right here. Adequate supply of fat helps you absorb your fat-soluble vitamins. We need fats in our diet. We're afraid of them because we've been conditioned to think, well, if you eat fat, it's going to get stored as fat. You know, I mean, that's really... Fats are most dangerous. You know, fats are necessary for cellular reproduction. They're necessary for functions in our body. In fact, there are some fats, the omega-3 fatty acids, they're called essential fatty acids because we don't make them on our own. We have to ingest them, but we absolutely need them for natural cellular metabolism and reproduction to occur. So understand that they're not bad. They're only dangerous when they're combined with high carbohydrate things and sugars. Carbohydrates accelerate the storage. So if, you know, eating fats, again, bodybuilders, they eat very clean diets. They will eat carbohydrates. They will eat healthy carbohydrates. A lot of them will come from vegetables that they eat, but they will eat tons of fat. Coconut oil, it's a saturated fat. They eat tons of it because it's a wonderful energy source. It actually is great for your body in many ways. And so just understanding these, you know, a lot of these things we've been trained to believe are of the devil, you know, they really aren't. It's just understanding how to eat them appropriately. And then again, the same thing, the same chart, be familiar with the vegetables that are lowest in carbohydrates, the ones that are moderate and the higher ones. It's okay to have higher carbohydrate vegetables. But again, you know, make sure you're mixing them with some of the lower ones. Learn how to do things the best way possible. And then again, this here is one of the reasons that people are afraid of fats, because 1 gram of fat is twice as much as 1 gram of carbohydrates or protein as far as calories go. So we're like, oh crap, it's gonna sink my ship. It's really not that bad if we're doing things correctly. And then good healthy snacks. Know what good healthy snacks are. Know what the snacks are that you can have while on the program, and then learn what snacks that are going to be things that you like, that you'll enjoy. Prepare things ahead of time, because if you're prepared, it makes it real easy to eat them. You know, when people are doing training, it does take a lot of dedication to prepare exactly what you're going to be eating. Oftentimes, they'll prepare most of it on one day of the week. They'll prepare all their proteins. They'll cook them up. They'll cut them up. They'll put them in little portion-controlled containers. It may sound like a lot of effort, but you know what? On the day you do it, it might be, but the rest of the week, you love it.
Yeah, that's what I tell a lot of my clients when they're in maintenance, is I say to make it easy. Because one of the nice things about the meal replacements is how easy and quick it is. And of course, we can continue to use those here and there. But picking 1 or 2 days where you do most of your cooking, so that really it is an open and go. You open the fridge, you grab it, and you go. Because it's just as easy to grab 3 little containers, knowing that you've got 3 meals to go, as it would be to grab, 3 bars, Metafast bars. And so it's an awesome training to get used to it, and have it prepared. And we can do that now. I do that with a lot of my clients that even say, I don't have time to do lean and green. I said, look, you don't have to just do 1 lean and green a night. Why not make, your lean and greens a little bit larger? Of course, now be careful, portion size it out so that you can use it later in the week. So you've now simplified your life, and you don't have to think about what's for dinner. It's there. And it works great with people who have families, too.
I'm telling you right now, that right there, if you were to go and interview all the people that are on the magazines and doing competitions that are super lean and super, where they really try and get chiseled, they're doing that every week. Most of them will take Saturday or Sunday, and they will cook all their proteins, and they will portion everything out, and it's ready to go. Chris?
Yeah, a friend of mine, Scooby's been a bodybuilder for a long time. And so I found out from him just this week, so Sundays is his cook days. So on Sundays, like the first Sunday of the month, he cooks all his dinners for the month.
Wow.
For a month.
The month.
Well, yeah, you can
next
freeze
Sunday,
them.
he cooks
Freeze
all
it.
the lunches for a month. The next Sunday, he cooks all the breakfasts. And the next Sunday, he cooks all the snacks.
Dude, my fridge isn't big enough for that.
But he puts them in the freezer so that they're
Well,
he has a month worth.
That's,
rotating.
I'm telling you, it's an incredible, at first it might seem really cumbersome and tough, but once you learn the practice, it becomes very, very simple. I have a bunch of friends who are triathletes. That's exactly what they do. They cook all their proteins and prepare their, they cut their greens up. I mean, to where they can make a salad in minutes, and it just makes it simple. Their life is easy.
Well, case in point, we're leaving town Thursday to go global for
Yep.
our for Take Shape for Life, and so my whole packing has been totally around what am I going to eat while I'm gone, and the clothes will go in later. But
Nice.
It's all about, so I have all my proteins already fixed and
Packaged up, and
I'll just have to get ice from the cooler. So you can even, I have a lot of people that travel a lot. It can be done.
Yeah.
It just depends on what it is you want.
And really, it's learning. One of my favorite sayings I heard years ago, and I don't even remember who I heard it from, but doing what we're talking about doing here, it's not difficult. It's just different. Learning how to eat healthy is just different than we've learned up till now. And it's learning once we learn how to do it and we adopt those different habits and lifestyles, suddenly it's not difficult at all for us to avoid the foods that once, we loved. It makes it very easy. It's not difficult to prepare meals on Saturday or Sunday for the week because it's just part of your routine. So, that's really what it's about. Is the best thing we can do is let's look at the people who are successful at what they do. And that's, that's one of the tools that they'll use, is by preparing things, by making sure things are ready, so when they do have a time when they're, maybe they are starving, hey, the food that they need to eat is already ready to go, and they can just grab it and go. So anyways, those are all things we want to, take into account. And this is really the ability to master the amount of fuel and really the quality of the fuel. Think about that. Is what we talked about today is kind of that beginning piece of understanding not only just how to get to where we need to be, but how to stay there. It's not that difficult. It just takes a little bit of focus. And, it can keep coming out because, like I said, you'll pick up little bits and pieces each time you come, and it's going to serve you well. So just understand that this really is a lot more simple than we might think. It's just following the blueprint, trusting that the blueprint is going to get you to where you want to be, because it will, and just keep doing it till you get there. So if you have questions, make sure you ask, because, while what we're taught, everyone is a little bit different. Some people do lose weight faster than others. Some people, but you know what? The program, I'll tell you right now, this program works for everybody. These habits work for everybody. It's just understanding how to learn them, adopt them, and make them a part of who you are. So are there any questions? Because that's pretty much what we're, that kind of sets us up. In the coming weeks, we'll talk a little bit more about the foods, how to really control our glycemic index, how to control that spike, and the food, the foods we should and shouldn't eat. And so we'll get into all of those different bits and pieces. And, again, we're going to be laying out the rest of our blueprint to make sure you get to what your goals are and to stay there ultimately. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please remember, your friends and family are always welcome to join us. We have more chairs we can set up, and we can grease our hips and slide more people in here. So please bring friends. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you.